I do think artists have a responsibility to engage socially. Being an artist is not something I thought was feasible, when I was growing up. And so being a writer, being an artist was not something I ever allowed myself to entertain. And I was 26 the first time I took a class at the Boston Center for Adult Education, and I was just hooked. I'd always been writing, but this gave me some legitimacy. It was a program I could afford. It was like in this general neighborhood, and that spiraled to the next thing, and to the next thing, to the next thing. Because writing has always been such a solitary act in my mind. It was something I did alone, and as I evolved as an artist, as a writer, I started to see my role differently. And this program just amplified that. And the fact that this program intersected with the year that we're in politically, I just felt like it turned up the dial. I felt like my role as an artist was not a selfish task that I did in the corner of my room. It was something that I really needed to amp up, take, on a broader scale, to allow other people to then amp up their own voices. My role has changed, I would say, through this program, in that I am continuing to work on projects that deal with issues of social justice, but my physical self is present in a way that hasn't been before. People are seeing me more. I'm doing events, I'm doing readings, I'm teaching classes, I'm mentoring people. I'm able to have more of an effect on younger writers, or not even younger, but people who might normally not see themselves as writers. But now, hopefully, they have a little more agency. There's a little more muscle in the pen, and they feel like they have something to say, and it's something that they can say through writing or storytelling. Historically, like protest art, I've just been kind of like reading a little bit about it, and I've been made more aware of it through this program, because again, I always saw myself as a writer, writing in isolation. Maybe I'd be part of, a group of writers doing a reading, or be part of an anthology. But the visual artists have really opened doors to me, just like protest art, like what is a fist in the air, like Prop 187 in California, like getting rid of bilingual education, like just all of these kinds of like visual images, and the power that they have in addition to narrative. It's fascinating. Even as someone who identifies as a writer, as an author, I still have that feeling of like, well, I'm doing this, but I could never be a multimedia artist, or I could never be a visual artist, and now those lines are kind of softening. Like, maybe I could. Maybe in my memoir I'll have some visual representations, some photos, some drawings, why not? And I was thinking about the multimedia projects, and just how the whole point of this program is to share stories in whatever whatever means that is, whatever kind of form that takes, to allow others to reflect on their own experiences. So it's about creating space. And I've always been, it's been hard enough as a writer, like to think like that my words matter, that my stories count, all of that. But now I'm seeing that there are more ways to tell stories. Actually, like 80% of the work is bringing students to the program, or the program to the students. And if I can do that and mediate, if that can be my role to facilitate those connections, like I feel like that's a lot of great work right there. So for instance, there's a program called Write Boston, and they work with teens on journalism specifically. They help them write op-eds, articles, profiles, and they publish them in a newspaper called Teen Ink. And so they're able to develop these skills. Some of them get paid to do this, and it's after school, on the weekends, in the summer. If I had a program like that in high school, I might be a journalist right now, and not to say that like being a writer is less of a writer than a journalist, or, you can do both, whatever. But it allows the students to feel empowered in a way that gives them agency. So when they go to college, they're like hitting the ground running. And also seeing Spanish as like an asset, not a deficit, because you're able to reach a whole other population, and for a lot of them, they never really see it that way. It's like flipping the switch a little bit. I'm like, you speak Spanish, you're bilingual. Put that on your resume. They're like, for real? I'm like, yeah, for real. And what I hope my work does is go a mile deep instead of a mile wide. So instead of telling a story of 80,000 immigrants, riding the tops of trains through Central America, crossing the border, I might choose to tell about one girl in Boston whose father was deported, and he's actually jumping on the train trying to get back to her in Boston. So it's a story, and the power of a single story cannot be, I think, will never expire. And so by being visible, I think we're letting young people know, like, oh, that's a possibility. Like, I can grow up and be an artist.